Hey all, thanks for watching. My name is John Vandeveer, and in the next 10 minutes, I'd like to summarize for you the paper in front of you. So this paper begins with the observation that accredited degrees have better labor outcomes than alternative credentials. And we hypothesize that prestige can be used to explain away this outcome differential. So why do we care about this question? I think there's three top-level motivations. One is an applied microeconomic motivation. There are many specific individuals that could improve their return on investment to educational spending by pursuing an alternative credential instead of a traditional degree. In addition, they can also, in many cases, accomplish that educational requirement faster. But an issue arises because if I do decide that I want to pursue alternative credentials in general, how do I go about selecting a particular quality learning provider? So, in part, this paper is concerned with defining applied heuristics and rules of thumb that can help people go out and actually find learning providers that are going to be able to land them a job. Once enough individuals in society are impacted, this ladders up to a macroeconomic policy concern. Here in the United States, we have a student debt crisis, and this could become a tool to drastically reduce the aggregate debt load. An independent reason that it might be beneficial, it could be this, that, or both, is that this could help improve the efficiency of the labor force. There's actually an argument to be made here that maybe we could actually shift the growth rate and not just the output level, because market-oriented education providers may be more innovative and adaptive to drastic social change, such as what we just saw during the pandemic. Another macroeconomic question here is whether policy action is even needed. If it turns out that prestige completely explains away the value attributable to accreditation, then we could just have like free agents in the economy voluntarily adopt alternative credentials without the need for policy action to actually alter the way accreditation works. The last motivation is academic. There's a really great book called Pedigree by Lauren Rivera. Here's a link to a talk she gave on the topic. So Dr. Rivera is a sociologist, and in that book, she documents that in a few specific industries, such as law, prestige is a really big driver of labor outcomes. So in this paper, I wanted to generalize on that across multiple industries. And then I also wanted to apply that to the unaccredited space. So materials and agenda, one material would be the paper itself, which is downloadable for free from SSRN at the link provided. The slide deck is open to anyone that has the link. The link is right here embedded in the slide deck, and then it'll also be in the YouTube video description. And then I would love to hear from you, whether that's just kind of a comment on the YouTube video or reaching out to me on my personal website at the link provided. That page further has links to all my social pages. Lastly, the agenda, pretty straightforward. We're going to go through the paper, methodology, findings, and conclusions. We've already covered the motivation. So the methodology for this paper is an online questionnaire design. I recruit survey takers through Mechanical Turk. Then within Mechanical Turk, I provide them a link over to SurveyMonkey. They fill out the survey, submit it, and go back to Mechanical Turk to get paid. One interesting component of the Mechanical Turk integration is that I do have some custom JavaScript that randomly assigns 50% of users to two different surveys. And so you can see at the bottom of the cross-sectional design, there is an experimental exposure to reviews for universities and for alternative learning providers. So US News provides like reviews for university quality, and then Course Report provides reviews for alternative learning providers. It is a cross-sectional design, so it's a one-time administration to a total of 454 people. The survey is comprised of three sections. One section is getting some baseline information about the participant, including their age, gender, ethnicity, what state they live in, what industry of occupation, and so on. The second section asks the participant about the level of prestige that they associate with real-world learning providers, including accredited universities like the University of Chicago, and unaccredited learning providers, including Google, App Academy, General Assembly, and some others. The third section leverages a vignette analysis, that is a hypothetical analysis, where I describe a school to the participant, and then I ask them about their prestige they would associate with that. And then I take the data from these three sections and I do three kinds of analysis. One is an analysis of summary statistics. We want to not just identify coefficients in this analysis, I actually want to identify thresholds and cutoff points where we can compare accredited and unaccredited. So summary statistics are really helpful here. I use ordinary least squares analysis to define a first pass optimized model that sort of drops irrelevant factors that are identified as controls from the first section. Then I translate that into a mixed linear model where I use individual effects. The individual effects, of course, are required to extract the bias that would be included by having a particular person with unobserved differences answer over and over and over again. And I model those as random effects. So it's a cross-sectional panel design, which is a really interesting design in my opinion. So let's talk about the dependent variable, which is hireability. And what this variable captures is the propensity to make a job offer to a candidate on the basis of their alternative credential. There's an elaborated definition in the block of text you can see below. Survey participants will read this, and it includes 5 specific examples of what an alternative credential could be. But to sum it up in one word, it's an unaccredited credential. The wording for the dependent variable question is below, and one important call out is that there's a focus on an entry-level position. After you get a job, you can leverage employer tuition reimbursement, and that kind of changes the game in terms of your return on investment. So we're really interested at the entry level. So on a 10-point scale, it's an index of likeliness to extend a job offer, and it's similar to willingness to pay, but it's not. Willingness to pay would be wages. That would be the price measure. And so if we want a non-price measure, here's 7 reasons that I don't want to use a price measure. And I'll just call out. One is to avoid assumptions about the shape of the price curve. So in terms of findings, a credential from Google was generally competitive with college degrees. It was better valued than a degree from the lower prestige colleges and less valued than a degree from the highest prestige colleges. I consider Google to be a super high prestige provider because standard credential aggregators don't even include Google often. People just know about Google, and they usually know about Google because of its market dominance. Specifically, I identified Google as an interesting learning provider by inspecting the Fortune 50 companies, and others in this group might include like Microsoft and Amazon. High prestige alternative learning providers are discoverable through credential aggregators, and they're just sort of the top tier. I specifically used Course Report in this case, and you can see the selection criteria on screen. What I found for high prestige alternative credential learning providers, including General Assembly and App Academy, is that they are what I define as weakly competitive. So in a nutshell, what this designation indicates is that in a job search of typical length, we do expect you would get a job offer on the basis of these credentials, but you would not get as many job offers as you would with a standard degree. Another important finding is that the experimental exposure effect to user reviews did favor alternative credentials. So conclusions, one would be stop subsidizing student loans. You get what you pay for, so if you really want to reduce the aggregate debt load, let's stop subsidizing it. As a second best solution, we can open those loans to alternative learning providers. And we can also remove institutional accreditation. A different practice would be to accredit at the course level or at the skill level. For firms, they can drop the degree requirement. We see this is happening increasingly already. And a second non-policy move we can make relates to when I just talked about accrediting at the course level or the skill level. This can actually be accomplished on the market by partnerships between universities and private learning providers. Important outcomes for consumers of alternative learning. The first finding is that if you do want to support getting a job offer in a job search of typical length, you're going to need to prefer high or super high prestige alternative learning providers. There's a really special case when you have an employer that provides alternative credentials themselves. Google would be one case. They treat their own credentials as equivalent to a degree for their own hiring purposes. And even IT boot camps often preferentially hire their own graduates. Final conclusion for the academy. So this does indicate that labor economics of prestige is generalizable beyond those few industries that Rivera pioneered. While I find clear evidence on the importance of prestige in many industries, I also find that it's not explanatorily powerful enough to totally explain away the independent power of accreditation. And therefore, if we really want to level the playing field between traditional and alternative learning providers, then we really should honestly be considering accreditation system reform. So that's all I had for you today. Thanks for watching. As a reminder, my YouTube channel is concerned primarily with economics, philosophy, programming, and games. So if those pique your interest, please smash the like button and destroy the subscribe button and obliterate the share button. And I strongly encourage you to comment on this YouTube video with a similar such ridiculous social media aphorism that I can use in my future work. Hope to see you around. Thanks for watching.